Hello, everyone. My name is Ivan. Welcome to the fifth webinar, Best Practices in 3D Scanning for Cultural Heritage, organized as part of the project From Raw Collection to Digital Collection, co-funded by the European Union. The aim of the project is to enrich the common European data space for cultural heritage using advanced 3D and XR technologies. So before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items to ensure everything runs smoothly. So please make sure your microphones are muted during the presentation to avoid any background noise. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, and we'll address them either during the presentation or at the end, depending on the timing. For any technical issues, please reach out via the chat and we'll do our best to assist you. Also, we would like to remind you that the webinar is being recorded and the recording will be available on our website. So thank you all for being here. And let's start. So today we will explore practical approaches for digitization based on our RCtoDC 3D and XR toolkit. The 3D and XR toolkit for cultural heritage is a core component of the RCtoDC project, designed to support cultural heritage institutions in their digitization efforts. This toolkit will serve as a comprehensive and user-friendly resource, providing step-by-step guidance on digitization workflows, equipment usage, and best practices. Currently, it's available online, on YouTube, and on the repository of the Croatian National Aggregator for Europeana called eCultura. The primary goal is to facilitate efficient and high-quality digital preservation, ensuring that cultural heritage institutions can contribute structured, reusable, and standardized digital assets to the European data space for cultural heritage. With the rapid advancement of 3D scanning, photogrammetry, LiDAR, and also XR technologies, there is a growing need for accessible and practical tools that help cultural heritage institutions navigate the complex technical landscape of digitization. This toolkit is specifically designed to bridge the gap between technical requirements and practical implementation, offering modular resources that cater to institutions with different levels of expertise and technological capacity. So as you can see on the slide, the toolkit is organized into multiple key modules, each addressing a specific aspect of digitization and data integration. These include frameworks for digitization planning, equipment guides, templates for metadata standardization, training materials, and case studies from real-world applications. By leveraging these resources, cultural heritage institutions will be empowered to execute high-quality 3D and XR digitization projects, ensuring the sustainability and accessibility of their digital collections. So our topic for today is Module 8 of the toolkit, which focuses on best practices. We selected 3 representative approaches to highlight different strategies in digitization. These approaches are based on real-world decisions, not ideal laboratory conditions, allowing institutions to align workflows with object value, reuse goals, and available resources. The purpose of this part of the toolkit was to carefully select 3 examples of best practice objects that reflect real-world digitization scenarios faced by cultural heritage institutions. Rather than showcasing ideal or experimental setups, the selection logic focuses on practical decision-making. Each best practice example represents a different but equally valid digitization strategy. The first example demonstrates methodological benchmarking, where the same object is digitized using different methods and technologies. This helps institutions understand how technical choices affect quality, cost, and reuse potential. The second example represents high-value research-grade digitization. These are cases where cultural, historical, or scientific importance justifies a higher investment in accuracy, documentation, and long-term usability. The third example focuses on scalable and resource-efficient digitization, showing how institutions can digitize larger collections using accessible tools and streamlined workflows. Together, these three best practices reflect the kinds of decisions institutions make every day, balancing object value, available resources, and intended reuse, rather than idealized conditions. So the first best practice example focuses on the object St. John the Baptist from the National Gallery of Slovenia and represents an example of methodological benchmarking. The sculpture, created by an unknown author in the 18th century, is housed at the National Gallery of Slovenia in Ljubljana. It was selected because it allowed us to digitize the same original object multiple times under identical conditions using different technologies and software workflows. We covered data processing of one of the meta works of this sculpture in our last webinar, which was about data processing, editing, and management. So in case you missed it, you can visit the project's official website or YouTube channel, or you can scan the QR code on the screen. So in this example, we explored 5 different types of recording equipment and 2 main software environments for processing. The goal was to demonstrate how different combinations of capture devices and software packages affect the final digital outcome, both in terms of quality and resource requirements. The object was recorded using professional 3D scanners, specifically the Artec Leo and Artec Space Spider 2, as well as less specialized equipment, including a Canon R5 Mark II camera and an iPhone 15 smartphone used for still photography and video capture. It's important to note that professional 3D scanners are expensive equipment. Together with their dedicated software, they typically cost several thousand euros and require powerful computers with high processing capacity. The advantage of this setup is that it delivers the highest quality geometric results with high accuracy and relatively fast processing times. At the same time, this case study shows that excellent or at least satisfactory results can also be achieved using photo cameras, smartphones, and video recordings. When combined with more affordable or even open source software, and in some cases also professional software such as Artec Studio or Agisoft, institutions can achieve very good visual results at a significantly lower financial cost. The trade-off, however, is processing time. While scanners produce high-quality geometry more quickly, image and video-based photogrammetry workflows generally require much longer computer processing times and more manual intervention. The final quality depends strongly on the recording conditions, the quality of the images or videos, and the chosen software pipeline. Sorry. So all recorded scans and image sets were transferred to computers for further processing using software listed in the RCtoDC toolkit under the Tools section, including Artec Studio 19 and Agisoft Metashape. By combining different capture devices, and software pipelines, we produced 6 distinct metaworks of the same object. In the first metawork, geometry, texture, and color were generated from Arctic Leo scans processed entirely in Arctic Studio 19. In the second metawork, geometry, texture, and color were created from Arctic Space Spider 2 scans processed in Arctic Studio 19. The third metawork combines geometry from the Arctic Space Spider 2 with texture derived from Canon R5 Mark II images processed in Agisoft Metashape. The fourth metawork uses geometry from the Arctic Space Spider 2 with texture created from iPhone photographs processed in Agisoft Metashape. The fifth metawork was produced entirely from iPhone 15 photographs processed in Arctic Studio 19. The sixth metawork used iPhone 15 video as the recording source, with geometry, texture, and color processed in Arctic Studio 19. These 6 metaworks show clear variations in geometric accuracy, texture quality, file size, processing time, and overall usability. This makes the dataset extremely valuable for comparison and evaluation. The main advantage of this approach is that it helps institutions make smart, fact-based choices. It's also a useful tool for training and comparing different methods, showing the real financial, technical, and practical effects of technology decisions. However, it takes a lot of resources and isn't meant for everyday digitization work. And this is why it qualifies as a best practice example. It allows institutions to benchmark different methods before standardizing workflows, reducing long-term risks and supporting informed strategic planning. The guiding principle here is simple: benchmark before you standardize. So our second best practice example focuses on the altar of the Holy Cross, made by the Baroque sculptor Francesco Roba. This altar was created in 1756 for the Cathedral of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary and Saint Stephen and Ladislaus in Zagreb, also known as the Zagreb Cathedral. After the earthquake of 1880, the altar was moved to the Church of the Holy Cross in Križevci, which is a town in northern Croatia. This example represents research-grade digitization of a high-value cultural heritage object. Research-grade digitization refers to a level of digital documentation that's intended not only for visualization or public presentation, but also for scientific analysis, conservation planning, and long-term scholarly use. It aims to produce a digital surrogate that can function as a reliable and measurable reference for the physical object. The altar was selected because of its exceptional cultural, historical, and research value, and because experts consider it to be one of the finest works by Francesco Roba. It required a professional-level digitization approach, including full documentation and rich metadata, making the resulting digital asset suitable for conservation, scholarly research, and long-term preservation. This case clearly represents the digitization of a complex, high-value sculptural and historical object. The main goal of this best practice example was to achieve the highest possible level of accuracy, completeness, and long-term reuse potential. Unlike more lightweight digitization workflows, this approach prioritizes precision and reliability over speed or cost. Research-grade digitization places strong emphasis on metric accuracy, traceability of methods, and documentation of uncertainty, that is, clearly recording the possible measurement errors and limitations of the digitization process, ensuring that the digital model can be trusted for analytical and comparative purposes. To achieve this, professional-grade equipment was used, such as a high-end 3D scanner or an advanced photogrammetry setup, combined with a controlled lighting environment. Advanced processing software was applied to ensure precise geometry, detailed textures, and consistent results. Such tools allow for the capture of fine sculptural details, surface wear, tool marks, and material transitions that are essential for art historical and conservation research. The workflow began with detailed planning and careful assessment of the object, including its size, material, condition, and conservation requirements. This was followed by high-resolution data capture, ensuring that all relevant details were recorded. The processing phase involved careful data cleaning, alignment, validation, and quality control. Finally, comprehensive metadata documentation was created to support future research, conservation, and reuse. This metadata includes information about capture conditions, or what we may call paradata, equipment that was used, resolution, accuracy, and processing decisions, which is the defining feature of research-grade digitization. The results of this workflow are characterized by very high geometric precision, rich and detailed textures, and strong long-term archival value. The final output can be considered a reference-level digital twin of the object. Such a digital twin allows researchers to take measurements, compare stylistic elements, monitor deterioration over time, and test hypothetical restoration scenarios without physically interacting with the original artifact. So the strengths of this approach are clear. It's highly suitable for research and conservation purposes. It offers excellent documentation quality and produces digital assets that can serve as authoritative references. However, these benefits come with limitations. Research-grade digitization requires higher financial investment, specialized expertise, and significantly more time compared to lighter workflows. It also demands institutional commitment to data storage, maintenance, and long-term accessibility. In our case, research-grade digitization is particularly useful because it supports multiple parallel use cases. It enables detailed scholarly analysis of robust sculptural techniques, provides conservators with a precise baseline record of the alter's condition, and ensures that an accurate digital record exists in case of future damage or loss. Additionally, the same high-quality dataset can later be adapted for education or exhibitions or public dissemination without repeating the capture process. This is why this example is considered a best practice. It demonstrates when and how it is appropriate to invest in maximum quality digitization, specifically for objects of exceptional cultural and scientific value. The guiding principle here is straightforward. Invest more where cultural and scientific value is highest. Research-grade digitization ensures that such investments result in a durable, reusable, and academically credible digital heritage asset. So, sorry. Our third best practice example focuses on the object Saint Stephen kneeling from the National Gallery of Slovenia and represents an example of scalable and inclusive digitization. Scalable and inclusive digitization refers to approaches that prioritize accessibility and affordability over speed or maximum precision. This allows institutions with limited resources to participate in 3D digitization. This object was selected because it was digitized using accessible equipment, such as a smartphone or a camera, following an affordable workflow. This makes it particularly suitable for mass digitization and broad dissemination, especially in contexts where resources are limited. The use of widely available equipment lowers financial and technical barriers, even though it does not necessarily reduce the amount of time or effort required. The main goal of this best practice is inclusivity and scalability rather than efficiency. It demonstrates how cultural heritage institutions can digitize larger portions of their collections without requiring specialized hardware or high financial investment, while accepting a higher demand on manual labor and time. So the equipment used in this workflow includes a smartphone or digital camera, combined with affordable photogrammetry software and a minimal setup. This significantly lowers the barrier to entry for digitization, making the approach accessible to small and medium-sized institutions. However, the absence of professional capture systems means that greater care and manual control are required throughout the process. The workflow itself is simplified in terms of technical requirements, but it should not be understood as a quick process. Object preparation requires time and careful attention, including proper positioning, stabilization, background control, and lighting adjustments, all of which can be more demanding without professional equipment. Image capture is particularly labor-intensive, as a large number of photographs must be taken from many angles to ensure sufficient overlap and reliable reconstruction. In practice, this often takes longer than scanning the same object with a professional 3D scanner. The processing phase relies on accessible photogrammetry software rather than professional 3D scanning software. While this software is more affordable, the processing itself is not necessarily simpler or faster. Some professional 3D scanning software offers efficient automation for data processing, such as alignment, noise reduction, and cleanup, which can significantly speed up the workflow. In contrast, lower-cost tools usually lack these automated features, requiring more manual corrections and repeated adjustments. Quality control in this workflow focuses primarily on visual consistency and general usability rather than metric accuracy or analytical precision. So the pros and cons of this approach are clearly identifiable. Some of the pros are then high accessibility through more affordable and less specialized equipment, enabling participation by smaller institutions, students, and other non-specialist staff. On the other hand, the cons are greater time investment and manual effort across preparation, capture, and processing when compared to workflows using high-grade 3D digitization equipment. Despite these limitations, this approach remains highly valuable. Its strength lies in inclusivity rather than efficiency or precision. It enables institutions to create digital representations of a much wider range of objects than would be possible if only research-grade workflows were used. In our case, this method supports public access, education, and visibility, ensuring that digitization efforts remain sustainable and broadly applicable even when resources are constrained. And this is why it's considered a best practice. It ensures inclusivity and scalability, enabling institutions to make their collections accessible even with limited resources. The guiding principle behind this approach remains simple. Good enough, done well, enables access. By accepting higher effort in exchange for lower barriers to entry, specifically a significantly lower financial cost, scalable and inclusive digitization maximizes reach and participation. So to conclude, this webinar highlights that effective digitization isn't about finding a single perfect method. Instead, it's about making informed choices that fit the specific context, goals, and resources of an institution. By presenting three complementary best practices, multi-method benchmarking, research-grade digitization, and scalable digitization, we've shown how different strategies address real-world challenges rather than idealized laboratory conditions. So to quickly recap, benchmarking helps institutions make evidence-based decisions. By digitizing the same object with multiple methods, it reveals how different technologies and workflows affect quality, cost, and usability. This approach allows institutions to understand the real implications of their choices before committing to long-term workflows. Research-grade digitization demonstrates when it's worth investing significant resources. For exceptional objects, this approach prioritizes the highest accuracy, detailed documentation, and traceable methods, including the careful recording of possible errors and limitations, what we call documentation of uncertainty. This ensures that digital models can be trusted for analysis, conservation, and long-term scholarly use. And the last one was scalable and inclusive digitization. This shows how accessibility and affordability can enable broad participation. By using more widely available equipment, such as cameras or smartphones, institutions can digitize larger collections and share cultural heritage with wider audiences, even when financial or technical resources are limited. While this approach may require more manual effort, it ensures inclusivity and sustainability. Together, these best practices reflect the everyday decisions cultural heritage institutions make, balancing the value of objects, intended reuse, and available resources. They provide a practical framework for planning sustainable, high-quality digitization strategies that support reuse, public access, and long-term impact. The key takeaway from this module is simple. Good digitization starts with clear goals, realistic assessment, and informed choices. There isn't one perfect method. There are well-chosen methods that work for your objects and your resources and your institution's needs. So now that we've covered the key takeaways from this webinar, let's watch a short video from the toolkit focusing on Module 8, Best Practices.
Module 8. Best practices. Purpose. Selection of the exact 3 best practice objects. Selection logic. The 3 best practices are selected to represent methodological benchmark. Benchmarking. Same object, different methods. High value. Research grade digitization. Scalable resource-efficient digitization. This selection reflects real decision paths faced by cultural heritage institutions, not idealized laboratory conditions. Final selection. Best Practice Object 1, John the Baptist. Why selected? Same original object, 6 different metaworks, multiple capture technologies, and software pipelines. Unique comparative dataset. Represents methodological benchmarking. Best Practice Object 2, Altar of the Holy Cross. Why selected? High cultural and research value, professional grade digitization, full documentation and metadata, suitable for conservation and scholarly use. Represents research grade digitization, complex, high value, sculptural or historical object. Best Practice Object 3, St. Stephen kneeling. Why selected? Digitized using smartphone or mid-range camera. Fast, affordable workflow. Suitable for mass digitization and dissemination. Represents scalable, inclusive digitization. Medium-scale object, digitized with accessible tools. Module 8, Best Practices, presents 3 complementary digitization approaches derived from the RCtoDC toolkit implementation. Rather than promoting a single optimal method, the selected examples demonstrate how cultural heritage institutions can align digitization workflows with object value, intended reuse, and available resources. The best practices support evidence-based decision-making, scalability, and sustainability in line with the objectives of the European Data Space for Cultural Heritage and the Europeana Impact Playbook. Module.
So that was a nice recap of things we talked about. And that's it for today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your participation and hope that today's session has provided valuable insights to support your continued success in 3D scanning and digital asset creation. So before we wrap up, I would like to invite you all to follow us on our website and social media accounts for more information about the project. And stay tuned to hear about our future webinars. So I'll just give you a couple seconds on this slide if anybody wants to scan the QR codes. And finally, we'd love to hear your thoughts, so please take a minute to fill out our feedback form. Your input helps us make future sessions better. And thanks again for being with us today. We hope you found it informative. And that's it from me. Thank you. Goodbye.